Hey, what's going on, guys? I just wanted to talk about something I've noticed with a couple of my fish that I feel like I should put out there. Um, I'm sitting behind the camera trying to be still because if I go towards the tank, then everyone's going to think I'm feeding them and you won't see the behavior. So, I changed the rocks again, which I do a lot just for fun and to see what's happening. And in the bottom middle-ish, you'll see my electric blue fryer eye kind of making a little nest spot. So he's picking up some dirt. There's some gravel. He's going to go spit it over there. And then he starts to chase the people or the other fish away from his little spot. And basically he does this every time I move the rocks. And he will be in this same mode for a few days. You can see he's barred, like he's got stripes on his side. He's a little darker blue than he usually is. He's fired up. And he basically will just make this little nest every once in a while, usually after I move the rocks, and defend it. And I feel like for a long time, having this fish and a couple other ones, I've thought of it as aggression. And I've come to learn that he's not singling out any one fish. He's just sort of chasing away people he doesn't want near his nest. I'm not sure who he's making his nest for, but he's not picking on one fish in particular. It's spread out over the whole thing. It's sort of whoever shows up near his nest doesn't want there. I've thought about this before because obviously in African cichlid tanks you try to limit the aggression in the tank, and I found that with this particular behavior, normally I just have to kind of wait it out. He's not being aggressive, he's not being mean, he just doesn't want anyone near his little spot that he's created. But after a few days, when no females will present themselves, normally he just goes back into, he falls back in line, he's not aggressive anymore, he calms down. I've noticed this with a couple of fish. So right now you also see my tilapia rodizii on the far right hand side, kind of blue face, red tail fin. He's chasing the one guy there, biggest guy in the tank basically. He's doing the same thing. He doesn't make a little nest really like the fryer eye's doing. He just sort of stakes out a corner. And again, after a few days, after having done a little escape, usually he goes back to just being a part of the crowd. The tilapia rodizii is probably my tank boss. He's the biggest. He's always in full color like he is now. And yeah, he's just defending a little spot. And again, I don't know if that's aggression, but like I said, I've noticed that after a day or so, because I just moved the rocks and did a water change yesterday. After a day or so, or a couple days, they basically go back to normal and just being a big crowd. You'll see the kind of right-hand side of the tank right now is fairly empty because tilapia is kind of chasing all the guys he doesn't want away. And then the bottom half of the left side is kind of empty because the fryer eye is doing the same thing. But in a couple days, maybe I'll do another video, you'll see everyone is just fluttering around normally. Another fish that I've seen this with is my Dimidiochromis compressiceps, or Malawi eye biter. Some people say that they're aggressive in the tank and people don't like to have them because they chase fish and stuff. In my experience, it's been very similar, where after a water change and rescape, they will kind of stake out a little spot. And I don't know if you can see him, but he's not very dominant right now. He is way up in here, right there. They normally stay high up in the tank, but when he's not chasing people around, is very submissive. He's not a very aggressive fish, unless he's sort of staked out a spot. And again, this is just what I've experienced in my tank. I'm not saying that any aggression will be territory defending, which will pass. But having left a couple of fish like the fryer eye and the tilapia, having seen this behavior before, I know that in a couple of days they'll just go back to normal. It's just because the setting is new. So a lot of people will say to move your rocks around to change the boundaries and maybe decrease aggression. But I've always found that after moving the rocks, there's a little bit more aggression for the first few days while they're trying to settle in and figure it out. Little fryer at the bottom there, I call him my little bulldozer because he's a pain. He'll spit gravel into the filter intakes and wherever he wants. He just makes a little tray, a little scooped out section, and defends that. But like I said, it's only for a few days and then he goes back to normal. Everyone else just sort of has to stay out of the way until then, and they go all up top. You can see that's where everyone is right now. So that's kind of, I have a very well stocked top left corner. But that's not bothering me. It's just they have to kind of work out their little differences, and that's just how it is with cichlids. If you want an update on my last video where I talked about the hex shield food and my one fish, my Taenochromis holotania, which is right there, right now, the long, slender black fella. He ate the hex shield for a day or so, and then he started spitting it out. Same with all the other fish, actually. They kept spitting out the hex shield, and they would seem to only eat it when they were super hungry. So if I didn't feed for a day or so and kind of tricked them, then they'd take a couple pieces down, but then a lot of it would flow to the bottom and not get eaten. And it differs from the North Fin when I just throw it in there and I'll just pound it, and it's crazy feeding frenzy for a few minutes. So my conclusion with him is he's eating and pooping and acting totally fine. He's not getting any thinner, he's not getting any fatter, he's sort of just staying where he is. So I've stopped feeding the hex shield just to kind of save it because it is kind of expensive. He did eat it for a few days. I didn't notice any change, positive or negative, in him. So I'm just been feeding him normal North Fin, and he's been eating it fine, and he's hanging out with everyone and not causing ruckus, and he seems fine, so I think he's fine. But yeah, I thought it was strange that some of the other fish didn't like the hex shield either. I didn't have a problem with any other fish, but none of them seemed to eat him. I did put a couple of the smaller haps in here from my grow up tank, so there's a little Livingstoni in there now, a little Malomo, a little Exochromis, who is awesome. He's up in the top left right now, and a little Fusco. So I'm hoping that all they grow up and don't turn into dicks. I'm just kind of worried about the Fusco. In the grow up tank, he was definitely running the show. I wanted to bring him in here kind of early to kind of bump him down a couple pegs, which he seems to have fallen into a lower spot because he's small. He's right in the center there, right above the rock right now, the little brown guy. But yeah, tank's going well, other than the fryer eye and the territory kind of reshuffling. But like I said, I'm not worried about it. In a couple days, everything will be back to normal, and I'm just swimming around in one big group. Anyway, thanks for watching.